Well, hello again, Gus. Why aren't you the smartest Golden of them all? Sometimes I call you Goldie. You think that I can present this subject in a way that even you can understand, Gus?
So for example, if I turn on the click track in Pro Tools, I'm going to pick up the delay and I'm going to start twiddling knobs. Experiment between about 150 milliseconds up to maybe even like 165. Jimi Hendrix? Again, I'm just giving you the easy answers right now. Red House, 268 milliseconds. Then you got multiple delays in stereo, panned hard right and hard left with longer delay times. Like the sound is circular, it's moving around you. If I were explaining this to Goldie, it would be this simple and demystified. The tempo of music is expressed in the number of beats per minute, and the beat is very simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. How fast or slow the music is. That's the tempo.
Okay, well, Gus has spoken. I told him I was going to talk about the metronome, and he just said, "That's it, I'm going to sleep." And I thought, well, if I can't even hold Gus's attention here, what are the chances of my YouTube analytics if I'm going to make it on YouTube like those big YouTubers?
That's 80 beats per minute. Now, if tempo is expressed in beats per minute, and the delay units that we use in plug-in forms or on rack mount devices, or if you have something that has a millisecond readout on your pedal,
Rhett Scholl's got the pedals, but I've got Gus.
those are expressed in milliseconds. But the solution is very simple. There are 60 seconds in every minute. There are 1,000 milliseconds in each second. So in 1 minute, containing 60 seconds, there are 60,000 milliseconds.
But Gus, if you learn this, you can attract Annabelle.
If that didn't make sense to you, don't worry about it because it doesn't really matter. The formula is this. If you take the number 60,000 and on your calculator you go 60,000 divided by the tempo of the music expressed in beats per minute, that gives you the exact millisecond readout for where to set your delay, and that will perfectly match 1 beat of the music. If we have the tempo of the music and we know that it's at 60 beats per minute, it's a very slow piece of music, and we want to know exactly where to set our delay to match 1 beat of that music, all we have to do is go 60,000 divided by 60, and that gives us 1,000 milliseconds. Let's see if that works. Precisely because it's not a world-class piece of outboard gear, let's go ahead and use the Alesis just to prove a point. Although that doesn't really arrive you at anywhere differently than you would have arrived at by stepping on your tap tempo on your delay pedal and tapping in the quarter note. But the magic formula becomes when you want to get to a subdivision of the beat, because 1, 2, 3, 4 is a fairly boring delay. In the space of 1 beat, if you put 2 notes, you have an 8th note. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In every 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, you have 2 notes. Very basic, simple, beginning level musical knowledge.
Were you traumatized by childhood piano lessons, Gus? Perhaps your mother thought it was a good idea.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So let's say that you want to set the delay to the 8th note. You're just going to take 60,000, divide that number by 2, so that's 30,000, and your new formula is 30,000 divided by the tempo of the music expressed in beats per minute, and that gives you the exact millisecond reading for your 8th note delay. Let's suppose that the tempo is 90 beats per minute, and we want the 8th note delay. We'll go 30,000 divided by 90, so that gives us the millisecond reading for what will exactly be an 8th note delay at a tempo of 90 beats per minute. But again, that's pretty easy to feel. It's very simple to just tap that in with your foot if you have a tap tempo, being fully aware of why I suggest you don't only rely on the tap tempo, but it would still be pretty simple to do. However, when you get into other subdivisions of the beat, and for example, everybody freaked out over the edge, right? Well, all he was doing was what's called a 3/16 delay. But tapping that in and feeling that initially can be a challenge. Now, I'm not living in the Stone Age, even though it might sound like I am, because I'm advising you to do this somewhat of the old school way without relying exclusively on a tap tempo. I'm fully aware that there are a lot of pedals now, most pedals now, that will have a switch where you can just set the tempo and then set that switch and it will match the subdivision that you want, for example, the 3/16. That's fine and well. But what do you do when your main delay pedal goes down 5 minutes before the gig and somebody has a backup but it doesn't even have a tap tempo on it at all, let alone a subdivision switch? What are you going to do then? Or what are you going to do when you like a unit really quite a bit, like that carbon copy delay, but it's bare bones? All you've got is a knob to set the decay time. It helps in a lot of ways to know how to set this stuff no matter which equipment that you're using. So, when it gets to the 3/16 delay, all you need to do is adapt the formula. That's going to be 45,000 divided by the tempo of the music in beats per minute. Let's say that we want 104 beats per minute, so you'd better know the tempo of the music ahead of time. Let's say it's at 104 beats per minute, and you know that, and you want the 3/16 delay. Sound like the Edge. All you do is you go 45,000 divided by 104, and that gives you in milliseconds the exact time that will match the 3/16 at 104 beats per minute. But I can already hear the cacophony of voices trolling me in the comments.
Is that what you think of my content?
How in the world am I supposed to know where to set that knob on my analog delay pedal that doesn't even have a tap tempo? Or even with the tap tempo, how am I supposed to know where to tap in the millisecond? Am I supposed to look on my stopwatch and try to count from 1 to 395 milliseconds?
Hold on, Gus. Come back. I have better material.
All you need to do is go 60,000 divided by that exact amount of milliseconds, and that will give you the beats per minute of that delay. At this point, you might start to get a little confused, but fear not.
So what I'm trying to say, Gus, is that if you want to simplify this, you just plug the numbers into your calculator once you know the exact delay time that you need, and then you can set your delay to a click track. Doesn't that make it a lot easier, Gus?
So if you've determined that you need a specific milliseconds amount of delay, for example, 450 milliseconds, we're going to take 60,000 divided by 450. That gives us more or less 133. So all you have to do at that stage is set a metronome, and there are free apps that you can even put on your phone. Have a metronome at 133 beats per minute, and then just twiddle the knob on your delay unit until each repeat falls exactly on the beat. Remember that the number you arrive at may or may not actually be the tempo of the actual piece of music. If you have made the calculations to arrive at a millisecond readout for a 3/16 type of delay, and that's the millisecond readout, then the tempo that you're setting your delay to is going to be completely different, faster than the tempo of the actual music. So let's say the tempo of the track is at 100 beats per minute, but we've set the delay to 133 beats per minute, and then when we play at the original tempo, we've got that 3/16 delay dialed in. Then it gets into longer delay times that are longer than 1 beat. Knowing how this stuff works has some real benefits. If I've set it to 3/16 and I like that, but suppose I want to experiment, what is twice as much as 3/16? Well, he would go 3/16 times 2. You could do that just on your calculator. You don't have to worry about the mathematics of it or be any good at math at all. For anything longer than 1 beat, we have to think about how many beats are there in a given unit of music.
Gus, how many meals are in a big bag of Alpo?
In music, in very simple terms, we call that the measure. When we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. It's very common in a lot of rock music, a lot of pop music. In fact, in most music now, it's in 4/4 time. but how many beats are there in each unit of music? If it was only 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you'd have a waltz. And if you have other units of time, perhaps like in rhythm and blues, 12/8, da 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 da. There's 12 beats in a given measure of music. But let's stick with 4/4 right now, just groups of 4, and we'll keep it very simple. Remember, in the formula, it's 60,000 in the top, and that corresponds to beats per minute. So 1 beat, we have 60,000 in the top. Well, let's just say there's 4 beats of music in one measure. 60,000 times 4, we arrive at 240,000 on the top, and at that point, we're free. Suppose you want the 3/8 delay. That's twice as long as the 3/16. You're just going to go 240,000 times 3/8. Type it into your calculator. You don't have to be any good at math. 240,000 times 3/8. You'll arrive at the number 90,000. You're going to take that number, and that becomes your number on top, and you just go 90,000 divided by the tempo of the music, for example, 100 beats per minute. Now 90,000 divided by 100 will give you 900 milliseconds. So at 100 beats per minute, you set your delay to 900 milliseconds, you'll have a 3/8 delay. In the real world, that equates to the and of beat 2. 1, 2, and. 1, 2, and. So the delay will fall a beat and a half later. Remember that once you have the milliseconds, you can calculate where to set your delay as simply as going 60,000 divided by the milliseconds, and that gives you exactly where to set the metronome to sync your repeats to. 60,000 divided by 900 will give you 67 beats per minute. You set a metronome at 67 beats per minute, you time your repeats to that, whether you want 1 or 2 or 3. Be creative with it, figure out what works. But now you've got your delay set, and that's set at 3/8. And if you're playing a piece of music at 100 beats per minute, that delay now is going to fall every beat and a half. You could do this with any subdivision or go in increments of that subdivision. So suppose you've got 3/16 and you want to go 1.5 times that. The fractional equivalent is 3/2. That's 1.5. So you're just going to go 3/16 times 3/2. In the top number, 3 times 3 is 9. In the bottom number, 16 times 2 is 32. So you arrive at a 9/32 delay. What in the world does that sound like? Well, it's going to be a little bit late from the exact beat. It's not going to be exactly on beat 2. It's going to be a 30-second note later. Now you can calculate exactly where that 9/32 delay would be. Let's assume a tempo of 100 beats per minute one more time. We'll go 240,000, that's our new number on top, times 9/32. And that will spit out the number 67,500. Divided by the tempo of the music, in this case 100 beats per minute, we wind up with a millisecond readout of 675. At 100 beats per minute, you set your delay to 675 milliseconds, and you've got a 9/32 delay. And all you need to do to set that delay is go 60,000 divided by the milliseconds you have. Remember, it's universal, it works all the time. So you just plug it into your calculator and you go 60,000 divided by 675. You wind up with, rounded up, 89 beats per minute. So you go, hold on a second, let me set my delay. And now you go back and you're playing at 100 beats per minute, but your delay itself is set to 9/32. Let's address the obvious elephant in the room. Do you really expect that any of the players know this or care about this? Of course not. You can set delays a lot of times by feel. I'm not making any claims that anybody that you're trying to sound like has sat down with the calculator and said, okay, I'm going to set it exactly this way. You can go a long ways adjusting things by feel. But if you want to be really scientific, this will allow you to get it exactly spot on with or without a millisecond readout. Of course, it's much simpler with a millisecond readout because you get to skip an entire step. Once you arrive at the millisecond readout, you just type it in and you're done. If you found this useful and this has actually brought real value to you, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll get updated when I put out new videos. And I'll be putting more on the Patreon. But even there, my thought is you should be able to get good information even on the YouTube avenues. Because I started seeing these YouTubers about 5 or 10 years ago. And it caused some kind of reaction with me the more that I began to see the content unraveling. You should actually be able to get useful information without the agenda behind it. So this space exists as an anecdote to all of that. Keep at it, and I'll see you in the next video.